Well, we've talked about a good number of the prospects so far this week after the Sixers land the number 3 overall pick. Now, we might as well, as the chat has been asking, and I'm sure the Discord as well, talk a little bit about some trade options for the Philadelphia 76ers. Welcome to the PHLY Sixers podcast here on a Friday, closing out the week here on this day where it was raining a little bit earlier. Now the sun is out, so it's a much better day for everybody. Yeah, a little bit. Just a little
lot.
bit. It was a lot of rain. It's been raining all week, man. It just seems like it won't stop.
I said to Bree before we got on here, there were 2 lightning strikes that hit so close to my house. I was like checking to make sure there wasn't a fire started outside. It's getting crazy around here.
Yeah, well, hope everybody is safe. Hope everybody's okay. I did see some flooding up in one area, just looking around as we were on social media just a little bit earlier. So hope everyone is safe and okay with all the rain that has happened. But we need to start talking about a little bit of some trade back possibilities with Derek Bodner, Kyle Newbeckham, Devon Givens, Bree, president of Basketball Ops. She's producing all of you in the chat on this Friday's lovely Friday. We need to get into this one, Kyle, because we were already discussing as we had laid out our week, the draft, keeping the pick made things a little bit easier for us to lay out the entire week of how we were going to discuss things. And then we've gone according to plan, including talking about some trade back possibilities. And it just so happened as we get a little bit of help from one of the guys that you guys know pretty well, Sam Vecini of The Athletic, and he put out a story discussing the Sixers potentially trading back, talking about Ace Bailey, VJ Edgecombe, Con Knipple, and also some trade back possibilities. So with it, as we sit here, Kyle, what would it take for you as someone just knowing the Sixers landscape, knowing what also could potentially be out there on a trade market, what would it take for you if you were advising the 76ers in this case to look at and move back possibly from 3 to maybe another number, a few other numbers, or even some players involved?
Well, first of all, I have to say, and I'm not picking on you, CJ. I am a little bit picking on you. First comment in today's stream saying, this is BS. Morey has repeatedly said they will be selecting at 3, not trading it. It'll be Ace. Talk about clickbait. My brother in Christ, Daryl Morey specifically, was called by his favorite player ever a liar. And beyond that, the person most incentivized to lie in public about the draft is anybody running an NBA team right now. So that is not to say they're going to trade back. It's not to say they're going to do any specific thing, including it could be taking Ace, it could be taking VJ, it could be trading back. Nobody is telling the truth about what they're going to do right now. In fact, one of the only times that a team publicly revealed the truth, the Sixers stuck them up with a gun in a bag and took an extra first-round pick from them because everybody knew the Orlando Magic wanted Elfrid Payton. So I just wanted to get that out of the way first. Now
and it's not even about the James Harden of it all. It would be absolute malpractice to say anything other than I love our options at 3. We want to stay at 3. It is, you do not want to even get people a glimpse that you might be thinking like, I don't love Ace Bailey. You can't do that. And look, if and maybe they do love Ace Bailey. Nobody really knows. But 2 things. First of all, can you imagine if they took anyone other than Ace Bailey and we spent like 45 days only talking about Ace Bailey? That would be malpractice on our part. We wouldn't be preparing you for it. But also, even if let's say they signal they love Ace Bailey, a trade comes along, they trade it, they just go, oh, well, we didn't expect to get this trade. We got offered way more. We couldn't turn this down. It's so easy to get out of. There's no downside to saying anything other than we love our options at 3. We're not trading the pick. They have to say it. Doesn't mean that this isn't like Daryl Morey's a bad guy for lying. This is every GM in this spot says, oh my God, we're so lucky. I love these guys. They have to. They have to. Go on.
Yes.
So, and now that that's out of the way,
we don't do clickbait here anyway. So let's just go. Yeah.
So, I mean, there's nothing to click on. You're just here. You're on YouTube. That just happened. So,
and by the way, I'm sorry. I'm going to let you finish.
Derek is really fired up about this.
We will get more clicks by having an Ace Bailey themed show than we will on this trade show. It's not clickbait if it depresses our view count. Go on. I'm sorry.
Anyway, so as far as what it would take, I think it's a two-part question, Devon. One, the first thing you have to establish, assuming you're not trading out entirely, and I think to trade out entirely, that would have to be, that's a completely different value proposition. That's a move where more than likely that's getting sent out with a bunch of stuff and you're getting a veteran star, like that type of trade. And I'm not interested in that type of deal, quite honestly. I just don't think this team is in a position where you say, boy, if we can turn Paul George into Kevin Durant, even though I think Kevin Durant's much better than Paul George is, I just don't see that as that's the meaningful difference between where they're at or where they've been at and trying to compete for a championship. Now, assuming we're just focusing on the trade back part of this, the first thing you have to establish is how far am I willing to trade back? How big is the tier of players that I'm willing to select from to say, if I don't believe in either of Ace or VJ, or I view them comparatively, like how many of those players do I view as comparable, right? So that probably, I would say for me, I don't know that you can get past maybe 7 or 8, because I think like the 5-6 guys that are maybe in there are credible arguments for a handful of them. But then once you get back into the real middle of the lottery, back of the lottery, there are guys with like actual genuine landmines as far as like when we talk about the Colin Murray Boyleses of the world, you talk about
Jaeger Demon
examples. Yeah. Agor, you talk about Derek's least favorite guy in the draft, probably Liam McNeely. Like I said, I am not trading out of 3 in there. Now, if you're telling me I'm trading somewhere between 5 to 8, and I can maybe come away with Trey, or I can come away with Knipple or Queen or even Malawach if you convince me, hey, we're going big. We just don't believe in Joel, whatever. If you can get to that territory and add a high value first round pick, or you add a player that is within a certain age band, right? Like I'm not trading back 5 spots to add a 33-year-old player, right? I'm not adding a small guard. I'm adding someone who is an athletic wing somewhere in the, let's say, 24 to 26 or 27 age bracket who can come in and play right now. But if he is not the difference between this team being relevant and this team being what they were this year or even slightly better, he still has the runway in front of him that with Tyrese Maxey, with Jared McCain, with whoever they would take with this pick, it's still a relevant player far into the future. So it has to be at least one of those things along with one of those top 8 picks so that I can still take a crack at taking a player in this draft and I get some future upside and or current and future production.
Yeah, the one that Sam Vicini brought up specifically was, I think it was 3 and Drummond and Oubre for Cam Johnson, 19 and 27. And that's the kind of trade that you make if you are, if you believe in Joel Embiid and you really want to contend this year, then you still get something, not a lottery pick, but you get something in this year's draft. Actually, 2 somethings in this year's draft, 3 when you count the 35th pick, and a player who can help you right now who's on a reasonable contract. I think Cam has like 2 years and like 45 million left, something in that range. Not a bad contract. That's a kind of move you make if you believe in Joel Embiid coming back this year and helping you win 55 plus games and potentially contend for a deep playoff run, which by the way is wide open because of all the injuries, but you have to believe in Joel Embiid. And it's tough for me to trade out of the lottery, like Kyle said, or something like that. Even if it's a fair trade, it's just, I don't necessarily think it fits what the Sixers' priority should be. So you start looking at it like Brooklyn has 4 first round picks, which is pretty wild. 4 first rounds, and I think a pretty early second round pick as well. If rather than 19 and 27, you can make that like 8 and 27, even without the Cam Johnson of it all, I have more interest in that. It doesn't necessarily have to be a pick, like a second pick in this year's draft. I want one like top 10-ish pick in this year's draft and a future pick. It could be future pick, could be this year, like 26, 27, like we were just talking about, or 19, or it could be a future draft as well to give you a little more flexibility, not only with that other pick to make, but also in a trade. that's something I have more interest in than, like I said, a good player right now, a useful player right now, and also then like 19 and 27.
The Cam Johnson piece of it does make it interesting for me, though, for as much as we've talked about the shooting at the 4 spot for him, for Embiid and Maxey and Paul George as well. And Cam Johnson, as you said, has 2 decent years left with that money. And the fit is just simply something that we've discussed so much about finding that player. And that could still be one that we're talking about, finding that player, even after the draft, if they go out there and try to find something there in the veteran market, or potentially something of a smaller trade that you could see where he could fit in. So I would be actually interested in that because of his shooting, the fact that he does have playoff experience in his Phoenix years, and what he could do to actually spread the floor. And as Morey talked about, not building the roster the right way, where if, let's say, Joel goes down for a little bit, or even Paul George is down for a little bit, someone who can pair up next to Maxey. He may not be able to carry a load like you would want him to in a Paul George role, but something of which it's more respectable having someone like Cam Johnson. And then to your point of the picks, whatever it might be from 8 to 19 to 27, where they do get that extra incentive from that. And maybe that player can also play a role here for Nick Nurse's squad when that does in fact happen. So that's a pretty good starting point, as we are so early in this process of hearing a name like Cam Johnson. We thought Cam Johnson was going to be traded at the trade deadline, but Here we are, where this is now the case where you look at the top of the draft, you see where some teams felt like, let's say the other teams, Utah, Charlotte, Washington, where they expected to be a little bit higher. And here in this case, you have Dallas, San Antonio, and Philadelphia, all potential playoff teams that can now make those types of moves where they can add a player like Cam Johnson and still find themselves somewhere, if not in the lottery, the 2 spots that you both brought up already in 19 and 27. So a decent starting point already. And I'm sure we'll throw about some other names and maybe even some other teams with multiple draft picks in this one. But at least a decent starting point as to which I can see the Cam Johnson piece to it that would fit with the roster. But also I want something back in terms of a young player in this draft, where maybe you are looking at Rasheer Fleming back on the back end, or you guys mentioned Agor on the back end, or some of these other names that we've talked about, Nick Clifford as well, somewhere in that 19 range, somewhere, back in the teens, early 20s, where you can still get a player that can help them right now.
No, Cam is fine. To be clear, Cam Johnson, not Cam Thomas, because I have no interest in the other Cam. And actually, Cam Thomas and Ace would be hysterical on the Nets, but that's not my problem. Cam's fine. I
feel bad for Ace.
Cam is fine. I just don't want to move that far back in the draft. If it was like, forget the 27 pick, if it was like Cam and 8, we're talking. Because then you're kind of doing the 2 timeline thing, where like if Joel Embiid's back, Cam could be useful. And if not, then I think Cam has positive trade value and you can maybe get a future first. I would want to dig into why he wasn't moved at the deadline. Were they just asking him too much? Was the league not interested in him at all? I want to know how the league values him, is I guess what I'm getting at. But, I would have interest in that. I just don't want to move all the way back down to 19. That's really what it is.
Yeah, Cam's a weird one just because I think there's been some weird medical stuff at times where I think during the draft process there were some red flags. No, that hasn't really. He's had lots of minor stuff that he's missed time for and has been in and out of the lineup, but there's been no major injury. There's the lack of true shot creation, right? Like he's a very good shooter and can get his own, but what is he doing for others on a team with no passers, as we've talked about 100 times? So yeah, I think that I'm in total agreement that you can't do the later post lottery picks and Cam, and that's all you're getting for trading out of 3, right? Because whatever any of us think about Ace or VJ or Trey or any of these other guys, there is a very different value proposition taking one of those guys compared to 19 and 27, where you might be able to find some good role players, and if you're really lucky, a guy who might be able to start for you. But as far as future upside and a guy who's going to make a big time impact, or that you have a reasonable amount of confidence can make an impact, it would be a lot harder to try to find that there. So I think there are a bunch of these types of trades to potentially make, the teams that I'd be keeping an eye on, like Brooklyn is a very obvious one because they do not have a foundational piece. They're at the start of a rebuild. They're just kind of in no man's land. New Orleans is a team we're going to keep coming back to, I think, throughout this process. They have Zion, but I think we all sort of believe that even if he doesn't get traded, they're exploring trades. They have a new front office in place. And typically what we see, especially going into a draft, when you hire a new guy, that guy tends to be pretty aggressive either on draft night or in that first offseason. And so the Pelicans at 7, which they're one of the other teams that are getting pushed down the draft board by all these jumps, they have a bunch of interesting guys, right? Like they have Herb Jones, guy who's a Swiss Army knife type defender. Shot has been a question throughout his career, although he's had some peaks and valleys with that already. But, big time defender, good rebounder, really tough, has had a good career so far. If you get him and 7, you could start talking to me about that. It'd basically be, I think, him for like Oubre and Drummond, and then you slide back the 4 spots. The other one that is a team that got screwed by the lottery gods or Adam Silver or just bad luck, however you want to look at it, depending on your perspective, is Utah at 5, right? Because Utah is another team dying to get that first major building block of the rebuild. They have been aggressively tearing it down for years now. Traded Mitchell, traded Gobert. Markkanen's been the main guy there. And they really don't have that like number one guy or guy for the future. And eventually you're probably going to have to either trade Markkanen just because nobody else is there, or you have to get somebody next to him. So do they value the jump from 5 to 3 enough to give you something interesting, or to give you maybe a lightly protected future first, which from a team like that would be pretty valuable because they're still probably at least a couple years away from being relevant again. So those are the 3 teams that I think probably make the most sense in terms of their desperation to get the building block, some of the more ready-made talent that they have on hand that maybe they can trade, or picks they have available to trade.
All right, let's take a quick pause, Derek. Get your thoughts on that on the other side. When we come back, talk about those 3 teams. Of course, Brooklyn, Utah, and the New Orleans Pelicans. See where Derek is on that as well. No Cam Thomas, only Cam Johnson in this conversation. When we come back,
buddy.
we'll get there right here on the PHLY Sixers podcast.
And guys, good news. Saturday and Sunday, you can beat the rush to Memorial Day at Ashley. Get unlimited savings. Save $100 off of every $1,000 that you spend. Plus, get amazing savings on outdoor furniture and get 60 months special financing, free local delivery, and with your qualifying purchase, you get a free gift. And that's not all. Free local delivery setup removal on all mattress purchases at Ashley, South Jersey, and Philadelphia. Guys, come on. Great opportunity. You get the outdoor stuff for the summertime, for your parties. Maybe you want to stock up on the living room, your fan cave, as we've been talking about. Get some stuff for football season, and eventually when the Sixers are back in the fall, settle in, get some great furniture to sit on, hang out, chill with your friends, family at Ashley, South Jersey, Philadelphia. Financing with approved credit, minimum purchase required. Some exclusions may apply. See store for details.
And I'm here to tell you about a new partner that we have here, HOF.
Ooh.
Look at that. HOF, you're like, well, what is that? Hall of Fame? Absolutely. It is Hall of Fame because it is the Hall of Fame bets that we have to talk. So look, during the season and all, and throughout the entire year, actually, Colin Derrick has given me and Bree the nicknames of Gambling Givens and Betting Bree. And we need to tell you about some of the things here with HOF. We've all been there where you parlay, you may have a 4 or 5 leg parlay, and the one just simply doesn't hit. You've had points, rebounds, assists, and then the one that you're waiting on, 1 rebound, 1 assist, or 1 extra point you need, you don't get it just because you missed on that half or that 1, and you're all ticked off. Well, we've all been there again, and the HOF app is built to fix something like that because it's a familiar problem that many of us have. And this here, the HLF app was built by 2 lifelong sports fans who have also happened to be some Ivy League grads. And HOF makes parlay research smarter, faster, and data-driven. Whether it's the MLB, NBA, NFL, NHL, or college sports, the app gives you beautiful charts, clean visuals, and real insight, not hype. They believe anything the books know, you should know too. And HOF isn't just about parlays. It's about for your player props that I mentioned, game lines, totals, and more, giving you the tools to break down trends, spot value, and make smarter bets across every major market. I know that I'll be taking advantage of this, especially for my betting segments there that we have before games in the fall and in the winter. For a limited time only, our listeners not only get a 7-day free trial, but they also get 50% off their first month when they use code PHLY at checkout. Just download the HOF app on iOS and Android, or visit hofbets.com, enter code PHLY, and you're all set. Welcome back to the PHLY Sixers podcast. Derek, do we ever look at the numbers? We had some pretty good numbers this year on the bets. You know, in general, we did pretty good.
I stopped tracking that. You started winning too much, and I didn't want to acknowledge it.
Fair enough. Well, we'll keep track next year, and I bet the numbers won't look as good just because we are keeping track. All right, Derek, your thoughts though on what Kyle was saying about, in particular, New Orleans and Utah picks 5 and 7. Utah, New Orleans at 7. Some interesting players, starting with Herb Jones, of course, with the Pelicans.
Yeah, no, I mean, Utah was definitely one of the teams that you sort of looked at as a possibility. They do have 2 first-round picks in this draft. They also have 21. You know, I think 21 is probably too much to give up to move up just 2 spots. It wouldn't surprise me if they wanted to give up, or let me rephrase that, because 21 isn't too much to give up. I'm not sure they want to give up both of their picks in this draft to move up 2 spots. They might want to give up a future pick in that draft. That might be more intriguing anyway. I don't have their exact, I could probably look it up, but I don't have their exact future draft picks owed right in front of me. But yeah, a second pick, whether that's 21 or future one, to move up 2 spots, I would certainly have interest in that. You know, it is, and I think the other one, which Hedva brought up, Houston having a 10th pick, they have so many pieces, they could maybe make an intriguing package, but they would have to actually fall in love with someone with the timeline they're on. I can't see them being a super big ace team. They just don't make sense logically to me as the one to overpay for the rights to draft ace. He does not fit either. I don't think their timeline or their needs. Well, they could use some shooting, but positionally, I don't think he really fits what they're looking for. So yeah, I think Kyle's probably right on the 2 that you would target. I think Utah was the one that probably jumped out in front to me the most, just because I do think they're probably a little pissed off that they moved down like they did. I do think they're probably, if there's a team you're looking for that has a real urgency to make a move like that, but it all comes down to evaluation. We don't know how Danny would evaluate someone like Ace, so that's always a sticking point. But yeah, I think those are probably the correct place to go after Brooklyn.
But whenever we get to the Utah Jazz, though, so many people are going to automatically bring up Lauri Markkanen's name. Just bring up Lauri Markkanen's name for this very, very topic that we're discussing. So just to jump into on Lauri Markkanen, Kyle, before you get to your point, it's a name that's always going to come up when you discuss something like that as a deal.
Yeah, well, it frankly, then that just turns into what else are you giving up? That's less a trade down and accumulate stuff.
Mm-hmm.
That's
you're
giving up
trade.
3,
giving
you're
up Paul
giving up
George.
2028, you're trading Paul George's contract, like that.
Which people probably wouldn't mind.
Well, they wouldn't mind.
They have to do it. Yeah.
But they would probably mind trading 3 and other first round picks for, look, I like Markkanen, and I think if you could turn him into, or turn Paul George into him, all things being equal, that'd be great. But it's also a move that's like, does that actually change where they're at? I'm not so sure. And I kind of want to, I said the other day when we talked about Dylan Harper and potentially trading up, I just am not really in a mode where I want to be giving up extra stuff, right? I would rather be the team that is accumulating. I think that's the type of period the Sixers are in right now. So on the Utah front though, which is where I was going anyway, I think the tough part with them, number one, I'd have to look at their sheet and say, you know, what are their picks that they have to offer that they could trade? They have 21, you said, Derek, this year?
Yep.
Utah?
Yep. I think it's originally from Minnesota, I want to say.
I believe it is too. And I think they might have a swap with Minnesota and maybe Cleveland in the future, if I'm remembering correctly. But that's something I'd have to check later. I think the tough part with them is, do they just say, we're going to sit here and we might get ace anyway, right? And I think that's what people would be surprised by if you're just paying attention to like public draft rankings and mocks and where these guys are at coming out of high school, so on and so forth. I think the evals are so all over the place that, let's say the Sixers just stay at 3 and the Sixers take VJ Edgecombe. I do not think it's out of the realm of possibility that Charlotte would sit there and say, well, we just prefer Trey Johnson. I want to draft this kid more than I want to draft Ace Bailey. And I think Danny Ainge has generally been someone who, throughout his history, while he's not like afraid to make deals, there is a lot of like, he talks about making deals and then ultimately decides, I'd rather just not give up extra stuff. And I believe in our ability to.
I mean, he's pretty notorious about it.
Yeah, well, I'm saying there have been times when he's been more aggressive, right? I just think a lot of times it's a lot of smoke and a lot of, well, I could do this and I could get on the phone with somebody. And then he defaults back to, it's just not good practice to give up extra stuff for a 2-slot jump unless that someone is special relative to, he's normally more of a trade back, accumulate more picks type of guy if he can. And so I think they're a little bit tougher to actually get to the table on this type of deal than a New Orleans Pelicans team that just got taken over by Joe Dumars. And this is not to say, like, maybe Joe Dumars has changed as an executive over the last, 15 years? He would have been, however long he's been out of like a full-time decision-making role. But I do think he's coming back into an environment where how first-round picks are valued and traded has changed pretty dramatically during that time, in part because in the interim period, there have been these huge, 4 and 5 first-round pick trades, teams giving up swaps, teams giving up like most of their draft future, and those are just going really poorly in a lot of cases. And so I don't know where his head is at in terms of, maybe he has surveyed the landscape and said, I'm going to accumulate. I'm not going to try to be aggressive. I'm not going to try to move up. Or maybe I think his history suggests that he's aggressive and he'll push chips in for guys if he thinks that's the right move. So he's harder to get a read on than I think Ainge is. But because of, the influence of ownership and everything else that's going on there, 7 in New Orleans is the one that I think is probably, if a move were to happen, they feel like a more likely partner to me.
And where would the names be around that point for you? 7. I mean, guys move up. Maybe Trey Johnson is off the board at that point. Bailey, of course, is gone. What other names? Maybe Con Knipple is also gone. What kind of target is that? Is that your CMB range? Is that your Malawak range where you are okay taking them somewhere at 7, somewhere around that area?
My feel is it's probably Khan, Malawak, Queen, CMB. I'm trying to think off the top of my head.
Khan, maybe did you say Khan?
I said Khan. Yeah.
I think Khan, if Khan is there, I would take him there at 7.
The only other name I'd add to that is Noah Sengwe. I'd throw him in there as well.
Yeah, which again, I have not done the homework on him. So I just leave him out of these conversations, not because he can't get there, but I just have no rational thoughts to offer on him. But yeah, if you're moving to 7 and you trade for Herb Jones, which we discussed trading for him at points last season. So that's a guy who fits now, fits later, adds a bunch of stuff that you want, and you get potentially a shooter, maybe you add a big, whatever it is, like, that'd be a good haul. Now, whether you can make that happen or not, who knows? And whether that's it really, like, this whole draft and this whole pre-draft process really centers around their evals for 2 guys. Ace and VJ. Like we're going to go back and forth on who they could take and where they slide back if they were to trade back, and what they should do. Really, those are the only two evals that I think fundamentally matter, because if you believe in the star upside for either guy, it's irresponsible to trade out of that spot, because you can get, even if it's a good role player, if you get two good role players, or like a high level starter and a role player, that is not equal value to drafting a star at 3 that you have under team control for almost a decade. Like there is just no way to square that circle. So it all depends on how they evaluate those two.
All right, we need to. I wanted to ask you guys about the conversation that it is around Ace Bailey, because since we've talked about him before the lottery, but since the lottery happened and Sixers land on 3, and the draft really, to your point, the eval of those two guys, it really starts at number 3 if things go chalk at 1 and 2. And just the conversation around Ace Bailey since that has happened, which has been heightened because of the lottery position. I wanted to ask you guys about that on the other side, because it has been something, man, from the Discord, of course, ours, and then social media in general, where people are. So we'll do that when we get back. We'll get to your super chats as well. We'll tell you about Derek's draft guide, along with Will Gottlieb from CHGO. We have it all for you on this Friday, right here on the PHLY Sixers podcast.
All right, we want to make sure we tell you about Empire today, because just like your favorite team needs a home court advantage. My home court advantage right there didn't work all that well, because I had myself on mute and started talking for a couple seconds before realizing it. But usually a home court advantage is exactly what you need.
That's my role.
And your
Derek.
home needs a home floor advantage, and Empire Today can help you get it. Empire Today has flooring experts, dedicated flooring professionals who focus on flooring every single day. We've all been to some of those big box stores, and while they might have a flooring department, the person helping you with flooring may have been doing sinks yesterday and could be stocking light bulbs tomorrow. Empire Today lives and breathes flooring, and they will be with you every step of the way. Their flooring experts bring the showroom right to your home. You pick the right flooring and the right colors for your space, so you can see how it looks with your furniture and in your house. You get precise measurements taken and have all of your questions answered, so there are no surprises. With Empire Today, you get clear, upfront, and all-inclusive pricing. Plus, you can schedule installation as soon as the next day. Schedule a free in-home estimate today, because some things are just better at home. PHLY listeners can receive a $350 discount when using promo code PHLY. You heard that right, a $350 discount with code PHLY. Restrictions apply. Visit empiretoday.com/PHLY for full details.
So many injuries are piling up right now in the playoffs, where guys are just falling with major injuries, from Damian Lillard to Jason Tatum to Steph Curry, with so many big-time injuries that have shut them down for the postseason and will impact their start of next season. If I had their numbers, folks, I'd give them the information for Rothman Orthopedics, because whether it's pain from playing your favorite sport, an old injury, or just age catching up to you, or it is your job, like these professional athletes, Rothman's team of experts is here to help you with evidence-based care and a mission to restore your mobility. They'll get you back on your feet and getting you back to what you love. My Achilles, my ACL, something that, again, Curry and Tatum are now going through with their rehabilitation, which I went through the great people at Rothman Orthopedics. So if you are like them and like me and have these major injuries, or something maybe not as serious but need to be checked out, don't let pain hold you back. Visit rothmanortho.com/PHLY to schedule your appointment today and get back to being yourself. Rothman Orthopedics, where getting you back to your game is their mission. Rothman proudly serves dozens of communities across Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and Florida, with 30-plus convenient offices, urgent cares, and walk-in centers. And for more than 50 years, Rothman has participated in thousands of groundbreaking research and clinical trials with the goal of advancing knowledge, developing treatments, and improving outcomes for the benefit of their patients. For more information, visit rothmanortho.com/landing/PHLY. Welcome back to the PHLY Sixers podcast here on this Friday. And I want to tell you about the NBA draft guide that we have right now on our site. And that is courtesy of Derek Bodner and CHGO's Will Gottlieb, the diehard
awesome
draft
stuff
guide.
from Derek
and while you might not like me, Will is sensational.
It's an all-access pass to the most in-depth scouting reports, expert analysis, and exclusive insights from our All-City Draft experts, Derek and Will. All you have to do is become a member and sign up to become an All PHLY member with us here. And you can go right to it, click on it, and there's just so many great features that you can take advantage of from the draft guide. Derek, we've been telling you, of course, that you've done a great job. Kyle just pointed it out. And Gene even said, someone in there, I thought it was Gene earlier, said, I love the draft guide. It's really, really good for you to start to get set up. So if you mentioned Noah Sengwe is a name that comes up and you don't know much about him because of him playing overseas, they have a write-up about that player and many, many more that are right there on our draft guide. So become a diehard member, sign up at allphly.com, take advantage to have access to this great draft guide. We are more than a month away, but a lot of stuff there for us to dive into, absorb, and talk about before not only the Sixers pick, but you're a basketball fan. You want to see what other teams are drafting said players. You don't want to be stunned and saying, who is that? You already read it because of what Derek and Will wrote at the All-City Draft Guide. So go take advantage of it. All right. Before we get to the Super Chats, I did want to ask, we got a lot of Super Chats. Derek, the discourse about Ace Bailey it's something, man. It's only been a few days now. Again, this started way before the lottery was set. But since then, it has gone back and forth to the borderline hate of Ace Bailey to just simply just talking about how much of a bad player he is. You don't like his attitude. And then there are some that are saying you can't pass up on a wing like that can score the basketball with that way, and the mindset that he has approaching the game. How have you read this since the Sixers have landed third pick? And as you pointed out earlier, that we're going to talk a lot about Ace Bailey. He's been talked about a ton.
Yeah, I don't think it's all that surprising, just because if you were following the draft up like prior to the lottery, Ace was always a very, very divisive player. He's divisive among NBA front offices. He's divisive among NBA scouts. He's divisive among NBA fans who were following all year long. He has some very pronounced strengths and weaknesses that I think are very evident the more you watch. And a lot of people, and look, I'm not going to sit here and say like every Ace Bailey fan watches highlights, but like when you watch highlights, and look, most of us are busy. We're busy with our lives. We only have so much time to dedicate to college basketball. I'm not expecting anyone in this chat other than Kyle and myself and Devon to have watched more than like five, like not even five, let's say 2 Rutgers games all year. And that's, you're really only popping your head in there because you're interested in Ace Bailey and Dylan Harper as prospects, because Rutgers as a team was completely irrelevant. So if you're, if you've looked at it and you've seen some highlights and you've seen, him on like highlights of him on TV or on YouTube, he can look sensational. But the more you watch him, he has some very pronounced strengths and weaknesses. Now, there's going to be differences of opinion on how much of that can be overcome with time and development. Some of the, wings in particular and playmaking wings are sometimes the latest to develop. Like there are a lot of examples of wings in the past who have had very significant weaknesses, especially in terms of ball handling and passing and floor recognition, who have become very good players. So I understand, I would argue that Ace has some unique weaknesses that the combination of all of them are, I think, tough for me to get past. But any one of those weaknesses has been overcome by, really good players in the past. Doesn't mean it's a high probability of happening, but it's easy to look at him and be captivated by what could be. And whenever you have a player like that and you're really drawn into what could be, but who also just makes a lot of bad plays, like when you really sit down and watch him and you really, really focus in on him, so many of his shots, there are very obvious passes that were there available to him. Like he settles for shots more than almost anyone I've seen. And he can have some nights where he's going to make them, but it's a frustrating watch. So I understand everyone who watches him. I understand it's going to be a contentious topic, because if he does figure out the 4 or 5 things he needs to figure out, he could be great. But there's a lot of leaps that you have to make to get to that point. And quite frankly, like there's so many people that we interact with every day who are just like, don't overthink it. Take the best player. You have to overthink it. Like if you go up to the PHLY Sports, I think it Was it on PHLY Sixers or PHLY Sports?
Also, what constitutes the best player is eye of the beholder.
Sure. Yes.
That's the thing.
But if you go, very recently, we posted on Instagram and on Twitter. I just forget which Twitter it was. The last 10 or 15 years of top 3 picks. There's a lot of hits and misses. There we go.
There you go.
Bree
Super
is
producer
absolutely fantastic. There are so many options of players who panned out, became great, and a lot of players who didn't amount to much of anything in this league. The fact that you can sit here and say, oh, don't overthink it. Of course you have to overthink it. You have to figure out which one's going to be Jaylen Brown and go from a player who couldn't dribble and couldn't shoot and didn't really pass, and which one's going to completely blow up and become a great player in this league. It is tough. It is very, very tough. It requires focusing in on a lot of the details and really trying to figure out which is, what is this kid like? What drives him as a basketball player, and which of his skills can be overcome? It's no, to put a bow on it, I expect this to be a very contentious topic.
Yeah, and Devon, I'm glad you brought this up because this is applicable to every single player we will talk about on this show or any other. One of the things that I love when we get to cover the drafts, when we get to talk about prospects, because it's a lot of nobody really knows, right? You can feel some degree of certainty, but we're all we come from our different schools of thought. Like the guys that Devon has been in early on, like Jeremiah Fears, like Trey Johnson, we have not all had agreement on them, but we can have interesting conversations about them because we all respect one another on this show for, how we watch the game, how we approach the game, all that. The thing I don't like about this period in particular, that now they're in this spot, and I'm not saying this is just Ace Bailey supporter thing. It's a problem for people who put themselves in I'm going to stand for this player and everybody else is wrong and stupid and can't be coming at this from the right perspective. You watch how people react when you not even criticize someone, say, hey, I think this guy needs to work on this. Like, hey, I like Ace's shot making. I think Ace can be a really big time catch and shoot guy, but I also don't know if he can really dribble the way a wing creator needs to. I have not seen him pass the way a high level top 5 pick needs to read the floor and read the game. And so people then flip it back and are like, VJ Edgecombe, Zaire Smith. And you do it the other way. It's like, all right, if I'm a VJ Edgecombe believer, it's like, I believe in the defense. I believe in that. And then it's, well, he can't dribble. He can't do this. You don't know basketball. You just look at stats on a page. You're a calculator boy, like all this stuff. It's like, no, I have watched for every guy that we have meaningfully talked about, I have watched 15 to 20 games from this year. And I still don't feel confident about who I would take at 3 or what my board looks like. And I need people to understand that just because I am slightly higher on VJ on a given day does not mean I think Ace Bailey is not going to have a career or doesn't have a high ceiling or anything. It just means based on what I watched, here are my takeaways and here are where I see the pitfalls. And I think the biggest problem about all of this discourse, right, is that when people choose their guy, they give that guy all the benefit of the doubt and everybody else gets none. So I'll give you the perfect example. We had, I don't remember who it was in here this week, said Ace Bailey has unlimited upside. VJ Edgecombe can't dribble. And it's like, you can't, if one guy who was, by the way, team success, much worse. 3-point efficiency, basically the same, despite shot making being his whole thing. You can't give one guy the complete benefit of the doubt and everybody else gets viewed through, oh, well, he's just who he's going to be forever. You have to apply the logic to every single guy. Here's his ceiling. How likely is it? Here's his floor. How likely is it? And then debate the in-between. It can't be one guy just gets all benefit of the doubt because that's how you end up completely overvaluing certain types of players and completely undervaluing other types of players. I will say, I've said on the show straight up, I know Derek's types of players really well. VJ Edgecombe is more of a Derek and I player if you just take all the other stuff out of it, I think on a broader scale. And Ace is not. But that doesn't mean that I'm going to put VJ ahead of Ace, because VJ's got really real flaws, especially for a guy in the top 3. I don't know that he can fit on this team. I don't know that he's ever going to be a real half-court creator. I don't even know that he's going to shoot, although I feel pretty good about all that. So what I would say to people who come in here, we get lots of crazy comments on YouTube, people online, whatever. Drop the certainty. One of the most important lessons, and while we're on the subject of Sam Vecini kicked this off today, I learned a very important lesson from Sam, who was nice enough to like talk with me about this. When I was very confident, Jason Tatum is just like not my type of guy. He looks like Tobias Harris and how he plays. And I was like not in on that type of player. And anyone who could think that he's a better prospect than Markelle Fultz, I don't know what you're watching. And Sam was nice enough. I don't think he'll mind me sharing this story. Sam was nice enough to reach out to me and be like, look, I really respect your opinions about basketball. I think you're a smart kid, blah, blah, blah. But there are a lot of guys. You'd be surprised by how many people in the league view Tatum comfortably ahead of Markelle for a lot of different reasons. And so I say all that to say, be a little less confident. Listen to what people have to say. You don't have to agree with them. You don't have to say, I think because you said this, VJ should be the guy or Ace should be the guy, but be willing to listen to other people's opinions, because this is an inexact science involving 18, 19, 20-year-old kids, many of whom are immature, who you don't know how they're going to respond on any number of different fronts. That's all I got. But just
that is
rein it in.
If you could bring up that list one more time.
We're going to do that later. Yeah, so we might as well do it now.
Well, no, I mean, there's a whole, but like, just look at the list and realize how many of these players turned into either average or just completely irrelevant players. It happens all the time. And when you're talking about the draft, certainty is the death of curiosity. You cannot be confident, even with something like the 3rd pick. The moment you become confident, you stop really investigating. You stop really digging. You stop really looking at the alternatives. And it is, I am both blessed because I got to do, cover the draft professionally for like an 8-year period. And that's great. It gives you some experience. It also means I have all of my failures written down. And not only do I get to see the failures of NBA GMs, I get to see all of the horrible scouts. And I say that, everyone has horrible scouts. We just showed you what NBA GMs who get paid to do. If you actually look at your opinions from a decade ago and how they worked out, you are going to lose a lot of confidence very quickly. And yes, it's a great, people have been on me a little bit because I've sounded like a little bit of a wet blanket with this pick. You have a great opportunity with this pick, an absolutely great opportunity, but you have to get it right. And it's not a certainty. And just because one guy currently is the favorite among a lot of people doesn't mean he's going to have the best pro career. And trying to figure out who among this group is going to have the best pro career is an impossibly difficult task. So when we sit here and we pick apart these 18-year-olds, does it suck? Yeah, I'd rather be evaluating 24-year-olds, both because I think it's fairer to the players, and also it's just an easier projection to make. That's not the world we live in. We are doing this because we are trying to find out the best conclusion to arrive to, because this is incredibly important to the future of the franchise.
And I'll add one more thing here. Ace Bailey, as Derek said, the evals are all over the place. You could talk to a team who would not take him in the top 10, and there are some teams that would say, I'll take Ace Bailey over Dylan Harper. I don't think there's anybody that I know of anyway that's taken Ace over Cooper, but I'm sure if you really explored the league enough, you could find that sort of person. And I'll just give you an example of the phenomenon I'm talking about. I had a respectful conversation with someone on social media the other day about VJ and Ace. And they were in the Ace camp and used a stat. It was rim finishing, right? So for Ace, they used rim finishing. For VJ, in the same discussion, they were using half-court layups. Yes. And I had to gently tell this person, hey, buddy, Ace Bailey on half-court layups shot worse than VJ Edgecombe, despite being 6'9" and meaningfully bigger than him and meaningfully having shots created for him by a number 2 potential pick in the draft. So That's the thing about having to try to be consistent, right? Everyone comes at the draft differently. Everyone evaluates players differently. But once you turn it into a thing where you use one scale to evaluate one guy and another scale to evaluate another guy because the first person is more your type of player, that's how you make absolutely franchise-altering mistakes as a team.
I also think I didn't expect this to turn into a long rant. I also think like comparing someone like Ace Bailey to Tracy McGrady or Kevin Durant, besides the fact that it's wrong, it's wildly unfair. We do this thing with young players. We can go back to Iguodala, right? When Allen Iverson left, everyone wanted Iguodala to be the face of the franchise and the number one option. And because you put it in your head that you think this guy can be X, when he only becomes Y, you call him a failure. I think we get so attached to the upside and the promise and the hope of young players that a lot of times we put unrealistic expectations on them, and later on down in their career, that paints their legacy, not for anything they really did, but because we want them to be someone that they're not. So again, I think it's easy to fall in love at this stage, and that's fine. You're a fan. You're not like Kyle and I legitimately, like Kyle talked about, like he's watched X amount of games. By the time the draft gets here, I will have watched every Baylor game and every Rutgers game and probably every game for a couple more teams. That is our job to do. So it's one thing for like you guys to watch a couple of games or highlights and come to a conclusion. That's fine. You're fans. We all have busy lives. When it's our job, we are going to nitpick the heck out of them because we want to come to a close approximation of their upside. And because it's our job to do that and try to get the best evaluation that we can.
All right. Let's
now get off my damn lawn, whippersnappers.
Let's get to the super chats now. Great stuff as always from you guys. Bree, let's start off with Bernard McCoy. B. McCoy saying, hello, fellas. Can we trade the number 3 pick to get Queen and Carter Bryant? Probably not, because we would have to give up one of our young studs like Justin Edwards in the deal, Bernard McCoy asks.
I mean, I think, first of all, if you can somehow get like a second pick in like the teens, or you probably have to go high teens. I think Carter Bryant's going to end up being somewhere in that like 12 through 16 range. I don't think he's going to fall much farther than that. I would love Carter Bryant if you were able to get a second pick. Yeah. I like him a lot. I just don't think if you're going to trade back, I would be surprised if you can get a second pick high enough to do that.
Yeah, I think the problem is on the Carter Bryant side, because I think you would, if you were like a big Queen supporter, if the Sixers were Queen believers, and that's the guy they wanted, they wouldn't make a trade without knowing they could get him with whatever the trade back would be. But the Carter Bryant one, I've seen him mocked anywhere from, and he's been a riser during the pre-draft process. I've seen him mocked in like top 10, right? Now that's not to say he's going top 10, but I do think his range starts around, let's say 9 or so, 9, and then anywhere up to like 20. So, I mean, it's a possibility you could get him at 19 or 21 or one of these picks that would be the additional if you trade back with one of these teams. I just don't think it's especially likely.
All right, let's go to MBD. Saying if the wagon is truly hitched to Joe and George and they have the pick, I would think it's a package for vet help, not a trade back, right?
To be fair, MBD did acknowledge that like seconds after he dropped the super chat, Kyle basically answered it.
Yep.
Not unplanned, but we did talk about this a little bit. Look, it's one thing to hitch your wagon to Joe and Paul George in the sense that you're not going to trade them, especially not at the bottom of the trade value, but also because you want to give them a chance to come back and see what they can look like. I don't know if I want to invest additional resources into that timeline, which is why the trade back is more appealing to me.
All right.
Yeah.
Quizmatic says, how does trading for Cam Johnson affect our chances at signing Grimes and Yabu Sele?
So, first of all, trading for Cam Johnson, unless you basically have to get up to his number in outgoing salary to prevent being hard capped at the first apron, because one of the hard cap triggers for the first apron is taking back more in a trade than you send out. So you'd have to add pretty additional, like what Oubre and Drummond are like 12 million. So you need to come up with like an extra $9 million. You got to find a way to do that so you don't hard cap yourself. But assuming you can do that, it doesn't really impact you much at all.
All right. Shizzo Flex had some time and money today spending on here on the super chats. So we want to run through these. I'm not putting my eggs in the Embiid basket. He's showing you time and time again he isn't healthy. And when he is, he shrinks in April. You got a gift at number 3.
So I would also, we don't need to make this a big Joel topic, obviously, but I would say one of the lessons of the last few years of the playoffs is that I think it's, frankly, it might be even more of a red flag to try to build around a oft injured player, because even the guys who are like the ultra durable players, because of the way the league has all these injuries in the playoffs anymore, and because of how strenuous the style of play is with the rotations and the having to guard from 3-point line to the rim, like I think it's a bigger concern than it has ever been. If you're, doesn't have to be Joel necessarily, but if you are built around a star that has like any kind of big medical red flags, I wonder if that isn't even like, there's even more of a premium on the guys who are just, for whatever reason, luck, genetics, taking care of their bodies, are just able to stay healthy more, because it feels like everybody's getting hurt now, and it's just a matter of time, right? Like Cleveland was healthy basically the whole year and then just completely falls apart when the playoffs
all of a sudden
hit.
3 starters are out and your season's over.
Yeah. So I don't know. I understand anybody. We've talked about Joel a lot, but I understand anyone who's kind of over it and skeptical about considering him at all.
And Shizzo continues, what are we talking about? Giving a gift, blank future, and the guys gave us a gift. You take the player you believe in at 3, as simple as that. So that was right around 3:30 when we were having that discussion.
Yeah, I mean, look, that's a fine way of putting it if you have a player at 3 that you truly believe in. And I've said time and time again, including before the Sixers got the 3rd pick, and I think some people just want you to be excited. Well, I had opinions before lottery day, and I'm not going to just completely dismiss them. I had a guy who I was completely comfortable taking at 1, I was completely comfortable taking at 2, and a whole bunch of guys that I was kind of comfortable taking at 6, but I wasn't really sure there was a lot of separation. So now I'm sitting here with the 3rd pick. The reason I'm open to trading back is because I don't see a lot of separation. I don't think there is a clear player that you take at 3. That's why, to me, it is an option. Not saying I would do it, but it's an option.
And let's stick with Shizzo, Bree. Sixers got a new stadium opening soon. You think people are paying them prices to see an average team? Yeah, all right. They better start building for the future.
Hey, speaking
Thank you, Shizzo. Thank you.
That's
number one, that's 6 years into the future. They have some time to populate that new stadium. Did you see? I saw a tweet about what it is going to cost to go to OKC Denver Game 7. And I've never spoken this sentence in my life, and I was like, boy, that's a nice perk for living in Oklahoma City. Because it was like $185. I was like, man, that's
if
like
that was in New York, you would have to multiply that by 10 if that was in New York.
Somebody said like
that's where I saw
Eagles,
it from a
that's
Knicks
Eagles
fan.
Jaguars nosebleeds for week 7.
Yeah, that's
Come
crazy.
on, man, that's crazy. I mean, their crowd is awesome, by the way. So maybe there's something to that. They're not pricing out the real fans and having all these corporate people in there, so you can create a real atmosphere where people will actually wear the shirts that they give out at the games.
That they do. Quick overtime. Let everybody know on the TV side, we thank everybody for hanging out with us. And if you want to continue to watch the show, watch PHLY Sixers podcast, head on over to allphly.com to check out the rest of the show. Riaz with the super chat. Hypothetically speaking, could the Sixers move from 3 to 1 by giving up future picks? 3rd pick this year, 28 Clippers unprotected. It's Nico.
Listen, I would do that if you want to talk about New York, in a New York minute. I'm there, baby. Give me Cooper Flag, and I wouldn't think twice about it.
Now, the last 2 words that he put in there are maybe the most prescient, and the reason this has a chance, it's Nico. That would be the only justification for it, though. No, I can't imagine it would work. Like Kyle, I'll do that in a second. I think if Nico did that, like I said, he might be run out of Dallas.
So, Devon, I want to ask you, because you're more of the ace guy of the 3 of us. Are you trading up if it's an option to one?
Yeah, I would. Yeah, I would. No, wouldn't even give it a thought. As much as I like Ace Bailey for the idea of what Ace Bailey could be, as I didn't show it as much as you guys did on lottery night, but man, even though I said they're going to get 3, I was like, okay, number 1 pick, that would be great for us selfishly, and that would be great for the Sixers, of course, to bring Cooper Flag in here. And the Ace Bailey stuff, I mean, look, I've said it plenty as we've talked about this way before. Once the Sixers season was done and we started to focus on college basketball games and then the tournament and all of that to where we are now, I like Ace Bailey. I like VJ Edgecombe. I like Con Knipple. I like Jeremiah Fears. There are a lot of players to like in here. And the same thing we always say is, may like a player on Tuesday. Next Tuesday, I'm going to like the other one maybe a little bit more just because of the outlook of where the Sixers are and my changing of my mind. And so much so is where I talked about Trey Johnson a little bit earlier in the year. Said, all right, things are not looking great right now. And then they got knocked off in that field of 68, didn't even make it into the field of 64. I'm like, that wasn't a good enough showing for Trey. And I'd say, all right, he's probably going to be way down the list now. Derek then jumps back in and say, you know what? Look at some more Trey stuff. I think I see it a little bit better, and I might like him and move him up my board. Same thing for Kyle, where he's like, maybe I can talk myself into Trey Johnson at this particular spot, especially since now we know where the Sixers are picking. So we always talk about, and Daryl Morey mentioned the fact that they need 25 and under players. They failed miserably when the injuries started to happen, and they didn't have enough talent. This is a gift, as Shizzo pointed out, as some of the others have talked about. We were not even supposed to be talking about this pick this year, and we are. So we just want to make sure that they hit on it and hit on it in the right way, where they get a player that can play now and into the future if they decide to keep him next to Maxie McCain, whomever that might be. So I like Ace. I like Edgecombe. Today, of course, I think I pick Bailey there. Do the Sixers maybe do so? Probably not, but more so of me talking about what they're looking at and what they're missing on their roster. I remember when I talked about they don't have a player like Ace Bailey on their roster, and somebody said, well, they have Paul George. It's the exact same thing. Paul George is 35. This guy's 19. He's going to be 19 years old. That's not the same thing. And for him to learn from him, that is intriguing to me. But I can also see where it is Edgecombe or someone else like Knipple that fits, especially even on a trade back where you can get Knipple and Herb Jones, for your example, Kyle, and the number 7 pick with the New Orleans Pelicans. And you're getting 2 players that can be a part of your team for a while, and one right now that Herb Jones has playoff experience, and you can see at least that Knipple shooting translating into the NBA. He played some big-time games at Duke in 1 year, and that stuff could work. So I'm all over the board. Today I pick Ace Bailey. Next week when we get back together and we might have a specific type of show, I might go somewhere else if I happen to be picking for the Sixers at number 3. So that's where I am right now. It's going to be a fun discussion for this next couple of weeks that we have here. It could be so much worse for us and the Sixers to not have this, a lot worse, and not talk about this stuff. We are here, though, instead talking about it, and I can't wait. I love the discourse. Sometimes I think it goes a little bit too far, especially when it becomes not just the player, but then to your point, Kyle, it becomes their personal attack of you don't know what the hell you're talking about when talking about basketball. I see tweets all the time. This is going to challenge people's basketball acumen because of who they think should be picked here. You like a player. It's cool. You like that player. And guess what?
It's just sports, man.
It's just sports. And when your player is not taken at number 3, you might be frustrated in the moment, but when he does something at Summer League, you're going to be thrilled. And when he makes plays in the fall and the winter, you're going to be thrilled. And you have since got over that player that is now performing for the Brooklyn Nets. You might have a keen eye on what he's doing in Brooklyn, but you've gotten over it.
I will say, Devon, purely if we were making an odds list for which of these players is most likely to have the one game at Summer League that drives people to hysteria, it's absolutely Ace Bailey. Like Ace 100%. Bailey will have one game at Summer League where he has like 28 points on 19 jumpers, and most of them.
The next game will be 3 for 15 with no assists and 4 turnovers.
So it's like listen, we have been around long enough covering this league that we know how it goes and and I think what Derek brought up earlier is something that I think is really important. What I try to be with these kids is responsible, right? I don't do this guy looks like this future Hall of Famer or whatever, except for really rare circumstances, because when people hear that, and then that kid comes in October and November and December and plays like crap for 2 or 3 weeks, or can't get off the bench or whatever it is, that's a lot of pressure coming down on 18, 19, 20-year-old kids who are just not used to, forget about just the NBA spotlight, Philadelphia spotlight, right? This is a great place to play when things are going well. Absolutely. It can be tough, and it swallows people up when it's not going well, and different guys react to it in their own ways. And so I feel like it's part of my job and our job in the media on the reporting side to just be at least reasonable about these kids. Because look, if Ace Bailey turned into Paul George, I would be over the moon for that kid. That'd be an amazing development story. Like the things, if VJ Edgecombe turns into Victor Oladipo or whoever, that'd be awesome. And we can celebrate those outcomes if they get to that place. Until then, we talk about what they can do, what the concerns are, and you just wait to see who the Sixers are going to pick, and we'll all go on this journey together.
It's going to be a fun time.
I think Densley right now in the chat saying, does Derek really want Ace to fall on his face? No, I enjoy watching good basketball. This isn't it's not like we're a radio show where we're talking about all 4 teams. We watch every game. We go to every game. We're around the team. We go to training camp. We go to summer league. We want our friends and families are all we want you guys to love the game that's going on. We want you guys to be interested in the team, and we want to enjoy the basketball that we're watching. I would much rather be wrong and cover Kevin Durant than be right and cover Cam Johnson 2.0. An order of magnitude. I have been wrong so many times in my basketball life. If I get an all-timer just by being wrong, are you kidding me? I'll be wrong every time.
Yeah,
stay tuned for that too, folks.
If you told me by just sending pessimistic Ace Bailey tweets, I could personally turn him into Kevin Durant, I would send a negative tweet a day until his debut in October. But that's not how it works. It's not in our control. We're just sharing opinions. That's all it is at the end of the day. So have some fun for this process, everybody. And just remember to be kind to each other and listen to other people's opinions. You don't have to agree with them. But this isn't life or death. This is not people's rights and things that really matter. We're talking hoops, and we're going to have some fun. That's all. It's all in the family, as Devon likes to say.
It's all in the family, man. All in the family. It's going to be a good time, man. It's going to be a real good time. All right. By the way, that graphic is crazy. Maybe we'll talk a little bit more about that next week. That number 3 pick that Bree put up there with all those guys on there. More hits than misses, but man, some misses on that one. For sure. All right, we'll be back.
We didn't have Ennis Freedom, his altered name, by the way. I noticed that. So I'll save my commentary on that one.
Well, and it oddly gets even worse when you start looking at the number 2 pick, which for some reason has an even more checkered history than a 3 pick.
Ugh.
It is tough even at the top, which we have learned a little bit too directly with a lot of the number 1 and number 3 picks that we've had here in recent years.
And that's why this is big for Morey, man. We always give him props for his draft picks. Those are in the 20s, man. 16 for McCain last year, the 20s. Boy, if you get this one wrong, Sixer fans will not be happy if he doesn't hit on this pick at number 3. Would not be happy. All right, let's get ready to say goodbye because we will be back next week, 3 p.m. every day, Monday through Friday of next week. All 3 of us with Bree, of course. And today we have to always just simply say it's time for the roll call. Close out the week.
Well, everyone, it's Friday, baby. It's the weekend coming up. So everybody's I hope you're nice and safe out there. You have some fun. You enjoy, now that the sun has come out, you enjoy some nice weather this weekend. First shout out of the day goes to a very specific person. Ronald is in the chat. And Ronald said he was watching the show from Saudi Arabia, which that I believe is a first in show history, as far as I know. So shout out to Ronald. That was very cool. We have people checking in from all over the place. It's always cool to hear from somewhere new. You just never know where people are coming from, or even why they're tuning in. Maybe they hate Derek and I's faces, and they're like, man, I want to punch that guy, but who knows?
Which I get completely. I completely get.
Whatever you're watching for, just know that Devon is by far the nicest one of the three of us, and he keeps us together. So thank you to Ronald, but thank you to everyone else as well, to Sean Ford, to Mellow 3 Point, to
Mellow, my man,
to Marcus Blackstock, always in the building for us, Marcus. We got Mary, we got MBD, DBF.
Thank you, Mary. MBD as always. Thanks for the super
Eugene
chat.
Ross,
What up, Gene?
Stevens, INS, Jess with the purple heart, Phi Chi.
Got the purple heart.
You know my girl Winona is hanging out in here. We got Colby
indeed.
Colbs.
Great show, Kobe.
Densley Richard, Philly 0024, Riaz. We have deep breath. Darkness in the building. who said that my beard is thoughtful and magnanimous, which that's definitely a first for me, hearing that about my facial hair. But I think I should say thank you to you, Darkness. I'm not exactly sure. Anthony McGuire.
What up, Ant?
What up to Anthony? Who else we got in here today? Joaquin from Cherry Hill, Hinky, Berto
What
Clips,
up, Joaquin?
Duck Holiday. You better love somebody.
Love somebody. Love somebody.
I hate that I have to say this, but I got to respect the roll call. Big Korean booty checking in.
The big ass.
Gotta respect the
honestly,
roll call.
I think I just got to end it on that one. That's, it's Friday. You're not getting better than that. But thank you to everybody else. We did have some super chatters as well.
That's great.
Shizzo Flex had a few. Bernard McCoy. Haven't seen you in a while, Bernard. Good to hear from you. Hey, Aaron, Riaz.
What up, Aaron?
A whole lot
what
of
up,
people
Riaz?
Today, but got to end it on big Korean booty. Come on, what are we talking about here? Thank you, everyone who is here. Another lively day in the chat and on the show. Please hit that subscribe button if you're new, and hit that bell icon if you're new, so you can get notifications each and every time we go live. We go live 3 p.m. Monday through Friday, same time every weekday. We are here, rain or shine. Normally would be in front of some nicer cameras and some professional microphones in studio these last few days for various reasons.
I come prepared.
I mean, I have a mic arm, and I just ripped it off the desk as I was doing that. But yeah, we got some microphones, but a little more professional normally, where the desk doesn't fall apart. So be with us 3 p.m. Monday through Friday. We have a good
game
time
7
here.
on Sunday. Game 6 tonight. Let's see what happens, y'all.
Devon's hoping for not a second.
Close it out.
7.
Close it out.
And on the way out, as we always say, please hit the thumbs up button, not just because you love a certain prospect or want them to trade back, but because you want to say thank you to super producer Bree, who had that graphic of all the number 3 picks ready at a moment's notice, because that's what she does. She's the president of basketball operations for our show, and she holds it together. Take care, everybody. We will see you on Monday.